Jai Shri Radhe, Sab Vaishnav and Co. Jai Shri Krishna. Continuing with the reading of the 252 Vaishnava Vartas in English, this is Varta 64, the story of one Kunabi Patel who lived in Gujarat, and today is day 85 of the readings. Bhav Prakash. This is a devotee of Sattvic disposition. Their name in the eternal Leela is Ujjiyari, who manifests from Madhavi and is thus a form of her divine loving sentiment. Part 1. On one occasion when Sri Gosaiji had been in Gujarat, this Kunabi became his disciple. He was a very simple man. He loved keeping the company of accomplished Vaishnavas, in fact, all Pushti Margi Vaishnavas. Once, in the company of Chacha Harivamsji, this Kunabi travelled from Gujarat to Gokul to have the sight of Sri Gosaiji. They had camped in one village, and he went to bathe in the nearby river. At a short distance from that spot, one Brahmin's wife came to the river bank. She had very advanced leprosy, and her body was full of maggots. She was intensely distressed. She had a son, and he had brought her to the riverside to try to get rid of the maggots. None of her limbs was completely intact. Kunabi had bathed and was washing his dhoti. Drops of water from it sprayed onto that woman's body. Wherever those drops of water had touched her body, her limbs were purified simply by that touch, and each of her limbs was purified. She said to her son, "Who is this one who is washing his dhoti, from which these drops of water have touched me?" As she said this, 4 of her fingers were restored. Then she said, "Oh, my son, look, wherever the drops from his dhoti have touched my body, that part has been totally healed. Please find out who he is." Her son said, "He looks like a great soul. He must be. Just the drops of water from his dhoti have healed your body." This Brahmin lady said, "It is astonishing. He is a great soul for sure. Please take me to him." That lady realized the true power of a Vaishnava as the drops of water touched her body. She and her son then approached Kunabi and fell at his feet. She folded her palms together and supplicated, "The drops of water from your dhoti have healed my body wherever they touched," and she showed him. Bhav Prakash. A question arises here. How could her body be healed from leprosy just by the touch of drops from that Vaishnava's dhoti? The answer here given is, from that Vaishnava washing of his dhoti, her heart was purified, and her 3 types of suffering were relieved. This has already been recounted in the story of Varana Vyas, but it is wonderful that her leprosy was healed. But this process of the drops of water falling upon her from the washing of the dhoti is only an excuse for what was about to unfold. This mother and son are divine souls. In the eternal Leela, the mother's name is Chandan, and her son's name is Chanoti. They are both Sakis of Ujjiyari. Once Chandan displayed pride of her own beauty in front of Ujjiyari, and she fell to earth for this offence and contracted leprosy. Chanoti had failed to stop Chandan's foolishness, and so she also had to fall to the material world. They went through many rounds of birth and death. Now their good fortune was sealed when they met Kunabi in this manner. Through the instrumentality of the drops of water from the dhoti, she came to understand the truth of a Vaishnava's form. Then she became humble, and her offence was mitigated. Part 1 continued. That lady then said to Kunabi, "I have been suffering many types of pain, but you are a great soul. Please tell me of some way that I can be completely free of my suffering." She began to cry profusely. Kunabi felt sorry for her. He went to Chacha Harivamsji and told him all about her, asking him to grace her further. On Harivamsji's say so, he got her to hear the Lord's name, the sacred mantra of refuge, from Chachaji, and then gave her some water in which the Lord's feet had been washed. He told her, "Mix this water from the Lord's feet with dust from his feet, and apply it to your body." As she began to apply it to her body, her disease was reversed and all the maggots died. She felt alive. She then asked of him what should be her next step. He said, "You and your son should come with me to Gokul to have the sight of Sri Gosaiji." They agreed. They sold some jewellery that they owned to be able to pay for the trip. They put their house in the charge of one nice man and set off with Kunabi for Gokul. They arrived after a few days' travel. They had the sight of Sri Gosaiji and bowed down to him. They sat and told Sri Gosaiji their whole story. Sri Gosaiji said, "Such is the power of Sri Vallabhacharyaji, but you also needed to recognize the true form of a Vaishnava." Afterwards, Sri Gosaiji initiated them both with the Lord's name and Brahmasamband and fed them with Mahaprasad. Then the Vaishnava told her to gather the mud from the place where Sri Gosaiji used to bathe and to rub it on her body, then to bathe and to do this regularly. She began to do exactly this. After a week, her body was fully restored to its original beauty. The mother and son stayed in Gokul for a number of days and listened to Sri Gosaji's divine discourses. They learnt all the ways of the path of grace. Then they went to have the holy site of Sri Govardhanachi and made a tour of the whole of Braj. After taking leave of Sri Gosaji, the two of them came back to their home together with Kunbi. Thus concludes Varta 64, the story of the Brahmin mother and son who were the recipients of Sri Gosaji's great grace and accomplished Vaishnavas, which came about through the drops of water from and the association of the Vaishnav Kunbi. She was cured of leprosy. Know that the company of Vaishnavas, beloved of the Lord, is such. Thus was the great grace of Sri Gosaji upon Kunbi and the mother and son. There is not really an end to their tale. Continuing with Varta 65, the story of Gangabai Kshatrani, who lived in Mahavan, Bhav Prakash. This is a devotee of Tamasi disposition. Their name in the eternal Leela is Bringani, who appears from Madhavi and is thus a form of her divine loving sentiment. Bringani would always run after Sri Thakurji, such was her addiction to his form, and Sri Thakurji was always pleased with her. Gangabai's mother was so beautiful that even her shadow embellished the earth. She also was very wealthy. Once Sri Gosaji came to Mahavan and stayed in the home of one Vaishnava that was close to where Gangabai lived. When she caught sight of Sri Gosaji, she began to have amorous feelings towards him, and she became extremely attached to him. She took initiation of the Lord's name from him, and thereafter could not be happy without seeing him. She would come to see him without her husband knowing. Bhav Prakash. In the eternal Leela, this Kshatrani is amongst the group of gopis known as Antagrihagatas. These gopis have intense desire for the Lord. Here, she focused that desire on Sri Gosaji. Every day she would come to Gokul and only return home when she had had his sight. However, in her heart she had amorous thoughts for him and was always looking forward to a time when she might get him to herself alone. However, she never got an opportunity for a long, long time. One day she tried to plan the time and chance, and when he was about to go to the toilet by himself, she hid herself there alone. She asked him to fulfill her desires. Sri Gosaji refused and said, "I am not going to participate in such goings-on." The Kshatrani became very insistent. Still he refused. He told her, "Do not be stubborn in these matters, otherwise it could lead to a bad end." Bhav Prakash, why? Well, Sri Gosaji is the Lord himself, but he is present here in the form of a spiritual teacher and acharya. Therefore he had to adhere to the scriptural laws. In these scriptures, relationships with other women than one's wife is forbidden. Yet another reason is that lusty, selfish love is an obstacle, because the Lord will never enter nor come to reside in the heart of one who is overcome with the mood of lusty physical love. Sri Acharyaji had written in his Sannyas Nirnay, or conclusions on renunciation, the Lord never enters the heart of one who is overtaken by lusty desire. Verse 6. Thus he has named desire as a devotional obstruction. Sri Gosaji is the protector of the rules of the path of devotion, therefore he cannot do anything that goes against those rules. This is why he spoke in this way. If we look at this from the point of view of the eternal Leela, the Lord only plays with those gopis when he so desires. They are not independent devotees. The Lord did not grant them their wishes. Why? Because they worship the Lord with amorous sentiments. Their divine reward was Sayujya Mukti, the liberation of absorption into the Lord. Then they became situated in his heart. Thus, when the Lord considered, "I should now grant these devotees the experience of the bliss of my form," he brought them out for a face-to-face. He then, having taken them out of his heart, plays with them as he so wishes. Here, that Kshatrani expressed the desire, and then Sri Gosaji denied it, because what she wanted was not appropriate for those who have obtained that type of Sayujya liberation. Thus, Sri Gosaji denied her. Part 1 continued. She became humble and said, "O great Maharaj, you are the Lord, and you are great. If you do not fulfill my desire, then who else can? The Lord shall surely fulfill the heart's desires of his devotees." She pleaded with him in this and many other ways. She kept her head at his feet. She said, "I have told you of my desire. You are the Lord. Look at yourself and do whatever you want. I am simply surrendered to you alone." Seeing her humility, Sri Gosaji said, "Now go home. Your wish will be granted at home only. This is my promise, but please now go home." So we conclude our reading at this point today, and we'll continue tomorrow. Aaj ke Anand ki jai ho, sab Vaishnavan ko sadar aur saprem Jai Shri Krishna. Jai Jai Shri Radhe.